Undercover boss orders simple meal. Stops cold when waitress admits she's feeding her kids instead of herself. A system may run smoothly, but that doesn't mean it's running right. Monday morning, a light drizzle cast a pale silver sheen over the window panes, making the entire street feel like it was wrapped in the whisper of the weather. The gentle rain fell steadily, just enough to dampen shirt sleeves, but not enough to send anyone rushing for cover. Sunrise Diner, Branch 28, nestled in a quiet corner, its rustic wooden sign hanging slightly askew beneath the eaves. Inside, the lights were on, the staff were in position, and the first customer was placing an order. A man stepped through the doorway. Worn flannel shirt, dark jeans, baseball cap pulled low, blending in with those who travel far, those seeking a quiet place to begin the morning. No one turned to look, no one noticed, and that was exactly what he wanted. His name was Derek Langston, CEO and founder of the Sunrise Restaurant Group, the chain he once believed would thrive if fairness were embedded from the very start, and everything else would naturally follow. But lately, some things were no longer following. Branch 28, according to reports, was fine. Stable revenue, low dish error rates, customer satisfaction at acceptable levels. But a deeper analysis from the HR department told a different story. Sudden staff resignations over the past 3 quarters. Multiple understaffed morning shifts without formal leave requests. A repeated anonymous note found across several survey cycles. Here, the ones who work the hardest aren't always seen. Derek sat down at a small table by the window, a spot where he could see most of the counter and the kitchen entrance. He didn't order right away, just removed his cap, pulled a notebook from his inner coat pocket, and left it open. Outside, the rain kept falling, with no sign of stopping. Inside, the coffee machine began to hum softly. The atmosphere was calm, almost suspiciously so. And Derek knew, some disturbances don't show up in charts. They only reveal themselves when someone is patient enough to quietly sit and observe. Not everything that stops us in our tracks comes from a shout. Sometimes, a single sentence uttered quietly can shake an entire system. Eggs soft-boiled, toast with no butter, black coffee or no sugar, no cream, just as you ordered. She placed the plate down on the table, her voice even and soft. A perfectly executed service, just the right pace, no extra words, no missing smile. Maya, her name tag was peeling at the edges, tilted slightly on a uniform with a worn collar. Her hair was tied up high, her movements quick and efficient, but her eyes seemed to carry something heavy and silent. Not the tiredness of a morning shift, but the weariness of something deeper. Derek looked up. "Thank you," he said, then added a question that sounded like small talk. "Is the morning shift going all right?" Maya hesitated briefly. A breath paused midway, as if her mind was torn between giving a polite answer and saying something more honest. Eventually, she smiled. A forced smile, but not fake. Then she said, almost in a breath, "I eat after the little ones. I haven't had anything today yet, but I'm used to it." She wasn't complaining. It was more like stating a fact she had long accepted as normal. She said it not to seek sympathy, just because sometimes you're so tired you don't bother to hide it anymore. Maya turned away immediately after, continuing her work as if she hadn't just uttered something that might pierce someone's heart. But Derek remained still. "I eat after the little ones," a sentence that seemed so simple yet lingered more deeply than any complaint. He looked at the plate of eggs in front of him, still gently steaming, but his throat tightened not because of the food, but because he realized the person who had just served it might be used to going hungry. And worse still, the very system he once designed to protect the hardest working people was now allowing a single mother to skip meals just to feed her kids. And sex. There are injustices that don't show up through shouting or harsh punishment. They happen through a mouse click, an access right withheld, and a person never allowed to touch the system that should have acknowledged their labor. For the rest of the morning, Derek sat still, silently watching. The coffee in front of him gradually went cold, but his eyes never left. The woman who had let slip a sentence that seemed unconscious, yet revealed a thick layer of dust covering what was once called fairness. Maya never stopped moving, tray in hand, apologizing for slow service, eyes tracking every movement around the counter. She didn't complain, didn't avoid, didn't make a fuss. She just did the work. Quietly, precisely, with full responsibility, twice as much as others and sometimes 3 times. But every time a customer finished their meal and nodded for the bill, Maya would step back. The one to step forward was never her. Ryan, a male employee, crisp shirt, light cologne, always appeared at the exact moment. He touched the POS terminal as if it were something only he had the right to operate. At first, Derek thought it might be a shift-based technical arrangement. But after the sixth time Maya stepped aside it, despite being the one who directly served the table, he began to see more clearly. This wasn't coincidence. This was a system. That afternoon, in his private office, Derek accessed the internal POS access system. With CEO-level clearance, he entered the Access Status, branch number 28 section. The list appeared: Ryan D., Full POS Access; Jason M., Limited Access; Maya, H. No POS Access. Note: pending performance review. Not recommended for operation during peak hours. Suggested by Doug H., Shift Manager. Derek frowned. The phrasing sounded reasonable, but paired with what he had witnessed that morning, it became a carefully veiled cover for favoritism. He continued checking the digital tip summary from the past 3 weeks. The results: Ryan received an average of 78% of tips via POS, but served less than 30% of total tables. Maya served an average of 55% of total tables, but received 0% from the POS system. Statistics don't lie. Only people who know how to quietly tweak permissions can distort the meaning of service. Derek sat in silence for a while. In his mind echoed Maya's earlier words, "I eat after the little ones." Now, it no longer sounded like a confession of sacrifice. It had become living proof of a system once believed to be fair but which, in truth, was starving the very people who should have been recognized first. Derek didn't close his laptop right away. He scrolled down to the internal notes section, those administrative exchanges that, in reality, carried far more weight than any official policy. A message from Doug, Shift Manager, sent to the branch supervisor a week ago stood out, marked with the label, "Internal, do not share." Maya's fine, hardworking, but she lacks customer handling skills when issues arise. Just let Ryan handle the POS, it's simpler. She's diligent, doesn't complain anyway. Derek paused. That seemingly harmless note with its tone of understanding was actually a verdict hidden beneath gentle wording. The less someone protests, the easier it is to push them into the system's shadows. He switched to the training progress dashboard. At this branch, Maya had completed the full basic POS operations course 3 months ago and was rated excellent in the hands-on skills assessment. Final evaluator: Ryan D. Recommendation to withhold access: Doug H. A perfectly closed loop. Maya trained by someone who never let her near the system. Rated as excellent yet held back by the very person directing operations. Derek leaned back in his chair, fingers interlaced. He used to believe a good system could correct itself if it veered off course. But now, he realized, even the best designed system, in the wrong hands, becomes a tool for erasing value. He opened internal email, quickly drafted a memo addressed directly to the technical and senior HR departments. Subject: Review of POS access rights. Branch number 28. Content: detected signs of POS access manipulation to create personal advantage and restrict fair access to shared operational tools. Requesting: 1. Restore POS access for Maya H. within 24 hours. 2. Suspend Doug H's authority to recommend access assignments. 3. Audit all morning shifts from the past 6 weeks. Compare table service logs with POS operator data. 4. Schedule a surprise audit at branch number 28 this weekend. Day: Langston. Derek hit send. The screen returned to the main interface, the Sunrise logo glowing quietly in the corner. He knew that tomorrow, when he returned, he would no longer be just an observer. Because ever since Maya said, "I eat after the little ones," he had become the one responsible if he remained silent any longer. Some systems don't need to collapse in order to be rebuilt. They just need one person brave enough to stop in the middle of the spinning wheel, look it in the eye and say, "Enough." Friday, 7:35 a.m. Sunrise Diner, Branch 28, opened right on time. The morning shift felt no different. Clinking cutlery, the scent of toast drifting in the air, the POS machine clicking like the steady heartbeat of a new day, until the door swung open for the third time. Not a regular customer, not a delivery driver, but 3 people in white shirts with internal audit name tags, followed by a man no stranger to anyone who ever attended the system's first training course. Derek Langston. No disguise, no dusty coat, just him, the CEO. And this morning, he wasn't here to observe. He was here to put an end to things. Doug's shift manager stepped out from behind the counter, forcing a smile. "Oh, Mr. Langston, what a surprise." "It's not a surprise, Doug," Derek replied. His voice wasn't loud, but it was quiet and final, like a sentence passed. And there's no need to pretend to be surprised. He signaled to the auditors. A laptop was connected to the main screen behind the counter, normally used to display the day's specials. Now, it showed cold, sharp numbers like a blade. Tables served, Maya H, Sig Shanta, Quatre per week. Pose, transaction performed, 0. Pause tips recorded. Ryan D.W., 87% of total digital tips. Next came the internal message. Maya does well, but letting Ryan handle POS makes audits easier. She doesn't complain anyway. The small dining room fell silent. Even the customers paused mid-bite. Derek stepped forward, locking eyes with Doug and Ryan. No one has the right to manipulate fairness just because someone else is silent. Silence does not equal acceptance. And today, this system will learn that lesson starting with the two of you. He nodded. An HR assistant stepped forward and handed them 2 file envelopes. Immediate termination orders. No negotiation. No delay. Ryan stood frozen, and Doug swallowed hard, but neither offered any excuse because everything was clearer than any defense could ever be. Derek turned to all the staff and customers present. Starting today, the entire digital tip-sharing system at Branch 28 will be restored to its original design. Every person who operates the POS every service rendered will be displayed publicly, in real time, on the screen above the counter. No more post-shift splitting. No more names erased from behind the scenes. He paused for a moment, then looked toward Maya, who stood by table number 4, still holding a glass of water, motionless. And you, Maya, thank you for not speaking up, because your silence forced us to listen more closely. Maya didn't say a word, but for the first time, she tightened her grip on the glass knot from tension. But because she knew, in this moment, for the first time, her effort had left a trace. She slowly placed the glass down as if to steady herself, not the object in her hand, but the wave of emotion rising in her chest. She wasn't used to being the center of attention. For years, she had learned to work well in the shadows, to do just enough, move quickly enough, never cause trouble, never prompt concern. And yet this morning, amid all the eyes, in the middle of an investigation no one believed would ever truly happen, her name appeared on the screen. No longer hidden, no longer misassigned, no longer labeled to be split later. Just Maya, the server, the one who deserved it, and finally, the one who was seen. Derek didn't look at her like a boss looks at an employee. He looked at her like a person who had once overlooked something and was now returning to make it right, slowly but surely. We've talked about kindness in training sessions, he continued, his voice deeper. But kindness isn't just how we treat customers, it's how we treat each other when no one's watching. Several staff members nodded. Jason, the one who had stayed silent all those months while Ryan used the POS instead of Maya, now stepped toward the counter, looking up at the tip-sharing screen with real-time display. He swallowed, looked at Maya, didn't speak. But sometimes, silence is an admission. And this time it was an apology. Derek ended the announcement with an unscripted action. He walked over to the counter, took out a name tag from his jacket pocket, and handed it to the HR assistant. Restore pause access for Maya H. And note, competency verified, proven by action. The name tag was reattached beneath the line, active POS access. The green indicator light beside it lit up small, but for Maya, it was like a beacon at the end of a tunnel she had walked through in silence for far too long. She placed her hand back on the terminal for the first time as someone stepping into a home she once could only stand outside of. IT0. Some changes aren't loud. They're simply this. One person no longer has to starve to keep their job. And a system finally learning how to look closer at what has remained silent. 1 month later, early morning light streamed through the crystal clear windows of Sunrise Diner, Branch 28. The first rays of daylight reflected off the digital screen behind the counter, where each transaction, each name, each tip was now displayed clearly in real time. No more vague access tiers. No more pending approval. And every server, every POS operation shown on the screen like a declaration. I was here, I did this, and I was seen. Maya stepped out from behind the counter, her new uniform crisp name tag neatly pinned, Maya Ha, assistant manager. Her hair was tied high, her steps were steady, not because of her new title, but because, for the first time, she entered a morning shift without the weight of feeling she owed something to the world just to be allowed to stay. Derek sat at the same old table, the one by the window where it all began, with a plate of eggs, a cup of coffee, and a sentence that once seemed casual. Maya placed the cup down, no longer avoiding eye contact. This morning's breakfast isn't one I had to skip. I just needed a chance. Thank you for seeing that. Derek didn't respond immediately. He looked at the cup before him. The scent was familiar, the flavor still bold, but something about this moment had changed. It wasn't the taste of the coffee. It was the taste of fairness when it's poured by the right person and set down on the right table. He lifted the cup, nodded, and thank you for standing still long enough to make the whole system stop and take notice. Around them, the atmosphere in the diner wasn't any livelier than usual. But something quiet had begun to spread from the way employees looked at one another, from how they touched the POS terminal, from the belief that no one has to stay silent just to be allowed to exist. Maya turned away, starting a new shift without having to rush, without having to dodge, without having to endure. Derek took a small sip. The taste of the coffee hadn't changed, but its meaning had transformed completely. Because fairness does not come from generosity. It comes when someone who was never supposed to be chosen is given a chance and proves that they should have been seen all along. An elderly customer sitting in the corner, someone who had come here for years but rarely spoke, turned for the first time to the young server who had just brought him pancakes. He pointed at the digital screen behind the counter, where her name now appeared clearly, along with her most recent tips. "You've just been recognized," he said, nodding gently. The young woman froze for a moment, then smiled bashfully. Not because of the tip, but because, for the first time, her quiet work was reflected right as it happened. No need to wait for the end of the shift. No middleman. At the next table, two employees switching shifts no longer competed over the POS machine, but instead exchanged turns according to a schedule that was now fair, clear, and publicly visible. No witnesses required, because now the system itself was the witness. At the main counter, a new line had been added to the bottom of the digital display, not large, not flashy, but seen by everyone. Every touch on this terminal is a public thank you. Derek saw it, then looked around. The diner was still the same diner. The walls, the same paint, the menu unchanged. But everything inside had shifted without needing demolition or rebuilding. Just a simple adjustment of the measure. He opened his old notebook, the one filled with notes about changes that needed to happen. Today, he didn't add any bullet points. Only one single line, written in blue ink. A person's value isn't in how loud their voice is. It's in whether the system stops to listen when they speak. From across the room, Maya saw him close the notebook. She gave a gentle nod, not a greeting, but a quiet signal. I've stood here, and I'm still holding this place, exactly as it was always meant to be. Derek didn't rush as he left the diner. The door opened, and the early sunlight poured in. His coffee cup still had one sip left, but he left it behind. Not because he didn't finish it, but because some things only need to be felt once to be believed.